After one of the most spectacular seasons in Formula One history, there were only 5 laps left until the end of the final race. Lewis Hamilton was about to become the only 8-time world champion, and at that point, it seemed impossible for that title to slip away from him. But then, something completely unexpected happened. That moment forced race control to make a decision that changed everything. Because that decision not only defined the outcome of the race, but also changed Formula One forever. It created such a huge controversy that it transcended the world of motorsport. For days, it was news and media outlets all over the world, even in those that don't cover Formula One. It completely divided the fans, and it still does. To this day, it's one of the most debated decisions in the history of the sport. However, there's something about what happened that day that most fans never really understood. And that's exactly what explains why this decision is still considered the most controversial in Formula One to this day. But to understand why, we first have to go back a few months. The decision that was made that day changed Formula One forever. But not just because of the decision itself, but because of everything that was at stake. Because after years of absolute dominance by Mercedes, Red Bull finally had a car capable of fighting for the championship. And from the very first race, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton starred in one of the most intense battles Formula One has ever seen. Crashes, controversies, moves on the limit, penalties, and a rivalry that kept growing race after race until it reached the breaking point. And finally, after 21 Grand Prix, both arrived in Abu Dhabi tied on points. So the winner would be the world champion. Verstappen took pole position, Hamilton qualified second, and everything was set for a historic showdown. When the lights went out, one of the most important races in Formula One history began. Hamilton had a better start and snatched the lead from Verstappen before the first corner. The Dutchman tried to regain the position in turn 6, but to avoid contact, Hamilton went off the track and came back ahead of Verstappen. Red Bull immediately claimed that he should give the position back. No investigation necessary.
That is incredible. What are they doing here?
But the stewards decided that he could keep the lead. And although it seemed that this would be the big controversy of the day, it was nothing compared to what was about to come. From that moment on, Hamilton started to pull away. Red Bull responded with an aggressive strategy, leaving Sergio Perez on track to try to hold him up. The Mexican managed to hold up Hamilton for almost a full lap, allowing Verstappen to close the gap again. And for a few moments, Red Bull started to believe again. However, once again, Hamilton pulled away. Shortly after, a virtual safety car caused by Antonio Giovinazzi's retirement gave Verstappen another chance to close in. But even that wasn't enough. Hamilton increased the gap again, and with only 5 laps to go, he was more than 10 seconds ahead of Verstappen. Hamilton practically had the race won. Mercedes was already ready to celebrate, and the 8th World Championship seemed inevitable. However, in an instant, everything changed. With only 5 laps to go, when it seemed that everything was decided, Nicholas Latifi lost control of his Williams and ended up against the wall.
Nicholas Latifi has crashed. You okay?
The safety car came out immediately, and then everything changed. Hamilton had 2 options: pit to put on new tires and risk losing the lead, or stay on track with his hard tires, which were already very worn out, trusting that the race would end behind the safety car, or that, simply, there wouldn't be enough time for Verstappen to regain the position. Mercedes chose to stay on track. For their part, Red Bull did exactly the opposite. Verstappen went into the pits and put on a set of new soft tires. If the race ended behind the safety car, that decision wouldn't change anything at all. But if the race was restarted, Verstappen would be right behind Hamilton with new soft tires, while Hamilton would be on very worn hard tires. A huge advantage for a final lap at full speed. And that was the question. Would there be time to restart the race? No one knew. Neither the teams, nor the drivers, nor the millions of fans who were watching the race. And as the laps went by, all the attention was focused on race control, because the decision they made in the next few minutes would decide the world champion. But first, if you're enjoying the video, subscribe. While the safety car was still on track, everyone was waiting for race control's decision. Between Hamilton and Verstappen, there were 5 cars that had been lapped. Then came a first message that seemed to seal the championship. Thank you.
The decision from race control was not to let the lapped cars pass, which puts Verstappen in a bad position.
That meant those 5 cars would be between Hamilton and Verstappen. And under those conditions, there was practically no way the Dutchman could attack. Mercedes breathed a sigh of relief. Red Bull already considered the championship lost. But then a second message came, and everything changed again.
All the cars ahead of you are allowed to overtake Hamilton.
Now they can overtake him. This was the logical decision, right? Just a moment ago, they didn't allow it. Now they do. And the last lap is going to be one for the ages.
Those were exactly the 5 cars between Hamilton and Verstappen. At that moment, few could have imagined that this message would end up becoming one of the most controversial in Formula One history. And just a few seconds later, a third and final message arrived.
Well, there it is, gentlemen. We're going to have one lap of racing.
The race was going to restart, with Verstappen right behind Hamilton and with only 1 lap to decide the world champion. Then, the race was restarted. Verstappen overtook Hamilton, crossed the finish line in first place, and became world champion for the first time. Oh my God, Max. Oh, in Mercedes, they couldn't believe what had just happened. No, Mike. No, Mike. That's not true. That was handled badly. The team filed a protest, but it was rejected. Verstappen was still world champion. However, the real controversy was never that the race was restarted. It was how that decision was made. According to the procedure established by the regulations, Michael Masi, the race director, had 2 options. The first was to let the race finish behind the safety car. The second was to allow all the lapped cars to unlap themselves, wait for them to rejoin at the back of the pack, and only then restart the race if there was still time left. But most likely, by following that procedure, the race would also have finished behind the safety car. In other words, either of the 2 options favored Hamilton. But Michael Masi did something completely different. He chose a third option. He allowed only the cars that were between Hamilton and Verstappen to unlap themselves. That left the Red Bull driver right behind Hamilton for the restart. But the rest of the lapped cars stayed where they were. It was a situation that even the drivers themselves didn't understand.
Yeah, man, what the fuck? Very upset.
And here's the detail that most people never really understood. No. The FIA's own report concluded that Michael Masi tried to finish the championship under racing conditions, something that teams and drivers had stated they preferred, as long as it was safe. And it's not hard to understand why. In the following years, several races ended behind the safety car, and they were heavily criticized by the fans, even though none of them had anything remotely comparable to a world championship at stake. After a season like the one in 2018, ending the championship behind the safety car would also have been an extremely controversial decision. The problem was never trying to finish the championship by racing. The problem was the way they tried to achieve it. Because the third option didn't affect all the drivers, it only changed the conditions of the duel between Hamilton and Verstappen. And it was precisely that which made Abu Dhabi 2021 the race with one of the most controversial decisions in the history of Formula One. The impact was so great that the FIA acknowledged mistakes in the handling of that finish. Michael Masi never directed a Formula One race again. And the safety car procedures were modified to prevent a similar situation from happening again. But the result never changed. That day, Verstappen won the first of his world titles. But that was just the beginning, because after Abu Dhabi 2021, a completely different stage began for him, one that made him one of the most hated drivers in the history of Formula One. So watch this video if you want to know how Max Verstappen ended up earning the scorn of millions of fans, and the controversies that made him the sport's main villain.